Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. There is so much news happening. It took us a minute to decide what to include. We only have an hour, but here's what we came up with. Hillary Clinton's new attitude on the FBI investigations is remarkable given her previous statements. Paula Jones joins us later in the show to discuss that. But first up, by far the news of the day, Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court nomination. It remains in suspended animation tonight, thanks, as you well know, to allegations that he assaulted a psychology professor called Christine Blasey Ford some 36 years ago, while both of them were still in high school. Despite blanket media coverage, the basic details of that story remain murky. Ford has not said when or where it happened precisely. She has said she didn't tell a soul about it for 3 decades. There are significant inconsistencies in her account, but we have never doubted Ford's sincerity, and we have never questioned her motives. And unless we learn new facts that give us reason to, we won't do that. We give her every benefit of every doubt. But there's another side to this story as well. Brett Kavanaugh, he's also got a family and a career and a reputation, and all have been gravely damaged by these claims. Now, Democrats could have helped clear this up weeks ago if they had asked Kavanaugh about Ford's story as he sat before them for days in the U.S. Senate. That's what hearings are for. But they didn't do that. Instead, they hid what they knew in order to cause maximum political damage. Now, in the process, they overturned his life, but they also overturned Christine Ford's life. She had asked to remain anonymous. Democrats betrayed her, and they dragged her into the public eye. Now Ford says she's had to leave her home because of threats. Democrats in the Senate did that purely for partisan advantage, and you should keep that in mind the next time they lecture you about how much they care about women. So what happens next? Well, 36 hours ago, Democrats were adamant that Ford get a hearing on Capitol Hill. The nomination couldn't move forward until she did, they told us. It's only fair. Now, they are saying precisely the opposite of that. Watch Hawaii Senator Mazie Hirono explain that having Ford testify before the Senate would itself constitute a form of abuse.
I am totally disappointed that all these people who have come forward to say, oh, we should hear from her, and now that she's expecting a modicum of fairness so she's not re-victimized, are now saying, well, if she doesn't want to testify, we should just go ahead. That is additional callousness from my colleagues that I am totally appalled by.
They're trying to set up a he said, she said scenario and bully her into either testifying on Monday or not being heard at all.
These people in Congress right now in that Senate Judiciary Committee, these white men, old, by the way, are not protecting women. They're protecting a man who is probably guilty.
Did you catch that last part? Not just men, but old white men. The worst kind, the kind who should be punished just for who they are. If nothing else, the story has opened a window into how many on the left really think. It's a tribal worldview where people are not regarded as individuals with distinct personalities and beliefs and aspirations, but instead as faceless members of ethnic blocs sorted by genes. It's a world where some people are inherently good and some are inherently bad. It's a place where how you're born determines what you're worth. That's what the left now believes. They say so all the time. But remember, you're the Nazi here, so shut up. Well, you either find this brand of hard identity politics disgusting, or you don't. Hillary Clinton is drawn to it like a bear to donuts. She came out of semi-retirement last night to weigh in at length on cable news. Here's how she said the Trump administration ought to respond to the allegations against Brett Kavanaugh. Watch.
White House could answer it very quickly by asking the FBI to reopen its background check and to take into account the accusation that's been made and to gather the evidence about what can be known. What I think the White House and the Republicans on the committee are trying to do is, basically put her in the dock and try to rush this through.
Now just pause for a minute and savor this. Imagine you're Hillary Clinton. Imagine saying something like that. You'd have to believe that the internet doesn't exist, that there was no record at all of anything you had ever said in public about claims of sexual abuse. Well, as it happens, we have access to the internet here, as well as a pretty long memory. Hillary Clinton has said an awful lot about sexual assault allegations, credible allegations, including of rape, all of them aimed at her husband Bill, for many women over many years. Hillary sounded a lot different then, like a totally different person. Of course, she was fighting to keep political power, and that gave her another perspective. Watch as Hillary Clinton dismisses and belittles the claims of female abuse survivors.
We're right in the middle of a rather vigorous feeding frenzy right now, and people are saying all kinds of things and putting out rumor and innuendo. It's just a very unfortunate turn of events that we are using the criminal justice system to try to achieve political ends in this country. And I just think that a lot of this is deliberately designed to sensationalize charges against my husband because everything else they've tried has failed. The great story here, for anybody willing to find it and write about it and explain it, is this vast right-wing conspiracy that has been conspiring against my husband since the day he announced for president.
Oh, how times have changed. One thing that has not changed is the torrent of propaganda from the left. Whenever their control of this country is challenged, they will say literally anything. Jim Sciutto, for example, a former Obama appointee now posing as a journalist over at CNN, summed up today's news this way, quote, "The offer to Christina Blasey Ford is blunt. Testify in public 6 days from now while under death threats, or your allegation will be ignored in the confirmation of a SCOTUS nominee." In other words, says Jim Sciutto, Republicans are jeopardizing Ford's life by asking her to tell her story. Not only is this overwrought and dumb, it's factually wrong. Republicans want Ford to testify because they want to get this over with and vote. That's what you do in a democracy. They've even offered to interview her privately in California. Senator Grassley sent a letter to that effect just recently. Democrats oppose that, of course. They like to ride this story into November and beyond. Instead, the left is calling for an FBI investigation. The FBI wants nothing to do with any of this, as we reported on this show last night. So Democrats are now demanding that Trump order the FBI to investigate the story. But investigate what exactly? Where would you start? Ford cannot even state definitively what year this supposedly happened. And by the way, why would the FBI be in charge of the investigation? Nobody's even alleged a federal crime here. If you really wanted justice in this case, you would bring it to the police in Maryland. That's a state with no statute of limitations on sex crimes. How would that end? Well, Ford says Kavanaugh was a juvenile at the time. If evidence of his guilt emerged, would he be tried as a minor? Would his record be sealed afterwards so it wouldn't overshadow his life? If those sound like absurd questions, that's because this whole thing is absurd. The Democrats don't care about Christine Ford. If they did, they wouldn't have outed her in the first place. They care about keeping a Republican off the court, which is fine. But if that's the case, then make the case for why Kavanaugh's ideas are wrong. But don't personally destroy a man simply because he's in the way. That's what they're doing, and the rest of us should stop playing along and say it out loud. Christy Setzer is president of New Heights Communication, and she joins us tonight. Christy, thanks a lot for coming on. So just first to the question of who really cares about Christine Ford. If you really cared about her personally, why would you violate her request to remain anonymous, as Democrats did?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really important to understand, to take a step back and understand why we're talking about her at all, because we're trying to get a window into who Brett Kavanaugh is as a person, both his judicial views, but also his sense of morality, because obviously as the person who's going to sit on the highest court in the land, he's going to be the arbiter of right and wrong for every man, woman, and child in this country, right? So I think that she has something to say about his sense of morals, just as, you know, the stories that we heard about how he is the coach of
I'm not denying that. I don't think that's a
girls'
stupid,
basketball
I don't think it's a stupid point at all.
Yeah.
But it doesn't obscure the point that this is being done in her name. We need to bring justice to her. We need to take her seriously as a woman and a survivor of this alleged attack. She asked for anonymity, and Democrats outed her, and now she's had to leave her home. So how can you say you care about Christine Ford if you betray her wishes and destroy her life, which they did?
She did ultimately decide to come forward in part because
after they leaked the letter.
After journalists sort of, you know, finding out that she was sort of attached to this, etc. I'm not sure.
Because
obviously,
Democrats
these
in the
things have a
Senate,
tendency
well, we are sure,
to
actually.
get out.
No, we are sure. We're sure because the journalists have told us and because there's no other way. Democrats in the Congress leaked that. They leaked her identity to journalists. So how can you do that and say you care about her?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is that, again, she's willing to tell her story. She initially wanted it to be one that she told privately. Now she's said that she's quite happy to tell it publicly.
Are you bothered by that, though? I mean, if a survivor says, please keep me anonymous, but you betray her for political reasons, you think that's okay?
What I'm a little bit more bothered by is the idea that she is now facing death threats from people who don't want her to go and tell her story against Brett Kavanaugh. She's scheduled to, in a matter of a few days, have to get in front of the entire country, probably on a dais next to the person that she says raped her, and tell her story all over again. That to me seems pretty upsetting.
As a factual matter, she's not claiming anyone raped her. A.
She's saying it was attempted. That's correct.
Okay. She's not saying it was attempted. She said that it could have evolved into that.
Okay.
B, She's not being asked to testify in public or next to Brett Kavanaugh. Senator Grassley sent a letter saying, we will send investigators, staffers out to California to speak with you in private. You've made an allegation. Even though you didn't want your name attached, Democrats put your name to it. So now it is out there. And why wouldn't you tell your story? We're asking to hear your story, and that is somehow abuse? How does that work?
I think she's going to tell her story. Again, I think all that they are asking for is, one, a little bit of time for her to sort of get comfortable with the idea of being not just thrust in the national spotlight, which has been happening to her for a while now, but to be this linchpin of this entire pitch battle, right?
I don't
Which
understand.
I think would be very
hold on. This is not a child. This is a woman in her 50s with a PhD. Okay? So I treat her as an adult because I don't patronize women. I'm honestly confused as to how it would somehow violate her dignity or safety to interview her in private to get the full story. Isn't that what we say we want? But we don't want that because this isn't about her or justice.
It's
about stopping a Supreme Court. So what's the answer?
What we're talking about.
What do you mean? It's definitely been out. It's in print.
Right. They've said that they can do this potentially in different ways. What they want to do, though, is to have this hearing on Monday and then get to a vote.
That is not.
As quick as possible.
I'm sorry. Just as a factual matter, Senator Grassley, who's in charge of this, has a letter in which she said, "Look, we want to hear your story. Period." Now, what they really want, I have no idea because I'm not God. But what they're saying they want in public is, we will send someone out to talk to you. Why in the world would she turn that down?
Because they're not entirely interested in really hearing that story. If we're going to be totally
why wouldn't she tell her story? Hold on. At some point, I'm sorry. I've really tried to give every benefit of every doubt to this woman, who I've heard, as I said 9 times, is a nice person. But she's accused someone of sexual assault. She has obligations here, too, and one is to explain herself. It's not all about her. It's also about Brett Kavanaugh and his wife and his children.
By the way, and she has released...
Really?
Yes, she has released notes from her therapist. She wrote sort of a letter about it at the time. She has said that...
So we've heard all we need to hear from her? Is that what you're saying?
Possibly, again, because she is not the one on trial, Tucker.
I'm not putting her on trial. Her allegations are putting a man who says he is innocent on trial.
No, they are not. He is asking for an enormous promotion. Again, that is what he's looking for.
This is a matter not about the Supreme Court. I know you guys don't care at all about justice or the individual. It's all about power. That's obvious. But in this case, you have a man who's a father to kids. I don't know what happened. I know she's accused him of this. Doesn't she have an obligation to explain herself? How does she not? That's the linchpin of our justice system, facing your accuser and hearing the whole story, not just throwing bits out there to wreck your life.
Again, she has submitted a letter. She's done these things. The next question that they have is, why can't there be an FBI investigation, just like there was actually in
Anita Hill? On what grounds? Why does the FBI have why not a state of Maryland investigation?
Because if you're a U.S. senator, you're probably a lot of things, but you're probably not a established prosecutor or investigator, whatever.
But
you don't know how to get to the truth of it.
Bethesda police investigate? Why the FBI has no jurisdiction here? This is so bizarre.
A number of senators have basically said outright, well, I'm going to listen to her story and then decide what I think happened. Well, you're not going to be able to get to the bottom of it after 35 years.
Leaving aside what we can know about a story that she can't explain, and I'm not attacking her. She can't explain when or where it happened. Again, not attacking her. I'm noting the facts, which are the only basis upon which we make judgments in cases like this. Not whether she's a woman or he's white or these insane identity politics criteria that the left is throwing out. What are the facts? And she's told us what she says she knows of the facts. And based on that, how will we know?
Right. So 73% of sexual assault victims do not come forward. And this is sort of why, because they understand that if they do come and tell their story, there's going to be a presumption of that they did something wrong, that they are trying to take a man's career down.
I'm not presuming that.
Whatever, right? And there's a reason why.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not presuming anything. I'm saying you make an allegation of a crime, don't you have an obligation to explain what you mean? I'm missing something. If I say you embezzled money from me, Christy embezzled money from me, I'm not going to tell you any details. You would say rightly, hey, man, you just accused me of a felony.
Tucker, she has explained her story to many people at this point. She told her story, obviously, to her husband, probably after the fact. She told it to her therapist. She told it to her lawyers repeatedly. She told it to Anna Eshoo. She told it to, I believe, to Dianne Feinstein. Right? She's told it many, many times.
Then why not have the Bethesda police invest? I'm serious. If you really care about finding out what happened, what does the FBI have to do with this, and where's the jurisdiction for them to do it?
Yeah, I mean, again, because the FBI has already conducted an extensive background investigation into Brett Kavanaugh.
That's not a criminal investigation.
Yeah, that's correct, but it's probably the best means by which to expand the investigation.
Last question, because I'm being told we're out of time repeatedly. Do you think she should participate in the FBI investigation, or has she said enough to her therapist? I mean, we're in crazy town now, but I just want to know, like, did she have an obligation?
That is 1,000% up to her. She has done more than she has
No, it's not. It's not up to her. You can't allege a felony and then not explain yourself. That's not up to her. I've tried really hard to be sensitive. Every American citizen who alleges a crime against another citizen has an obligation to explain him or herself. That's justice.
At this point, all she's trying to do is shed light on her experience with this man. It's one view.
It's one view? You're a rapist. Okay, just one view. All right, thank you. What does a law enforcement official think about this allegation against Kavanaugh? We're going to speak to one after the break. We're continuing to cover the story around Brett Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court, which is getting crazier and murkier by the moment. It's a 36-year-old allegation. It is apparently impossible to disprove, even according to Kavanaugh's accusers, who have explained he can never clear his name no matter what. Francie Hakes is a former DOJ National Coordinator for Child Exploitation and Prevention and Interdiction, and she joins us now. Francie, thanks a lot for coming on tonight. So since you've spent your life prosecuting, looking into crimes like this, what's your assessment of this allegation?
Well, Tucker, it's interesting. As a prosecutor, I look at allegations that are generally only he said, she said, with two factors. One, what is the level of detail of the allegation? And I got this from children as young as 4 all the way to adult men and women. What is the detail in the allegation that indicates veracity? And number 2, is there a motive or bias to make up a false allegation? And here you have to say that at least in the respect of how it's being treated, it looks very political. When it comes to the level of detail, I have to say it is lacking. I do not want to accuse Dr. Ford, and I'm not accusing Dr. Ford of lying. All I am saying is if I was assessing this as a prosecutor, this is not a case I could bring.
Huh. So since the calls right now, tonight, by Democrats, and needless to say they're being amplified by their puppets in the media, are to get the FBI to investigate this, to ask the president to tell the FBI to investigate this crime. If you were investigating it as a former prosecutor, where would you start based on the facts that we now have?
The only thing you can do in this case, in my opinion, Tucker, is talk to her and talk to Judge Kavanaugh. There are no allegations of exactly when this happened or exactly where it took place, what the other circumstances were at the party. And so I do not understand how the FBI could be expected to look into something that is, first, outside their jurisdiction, but second, 36 years old without any level of detail that would allow them to dig in and investigate.
So can we take those calls as credible or sincere?
I don't think so. It looks to me to be very political, Tucker. I mean, at this point, you've got an 11th hour allegation. Well, really, it's a 13th hour allegation, if you will, because it's after the hearings were closed. There was plenty of opportunity to ask Judge Kavanaugh about these allegations before they were brought out last week by Senator Feinstein. What I'm most troubled by is that you have a bare allegation on paper. Remember, at this moment, it's paper. The public has heard nothing from Dr. Ford. And so it is a paper allegation that looks to me like it is designed to bring down Judge Kavanaugh, certainly to ruin his life and reputation. And we don't do that in this country without due process.
Well, we certainly do it quite a bit now, I've noticed. Francie, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Over on CNN, commentator Simone Sanders has staked out a brand new position by wanting to hear testimony about allegations of abuse from Christine Ford. Republicans are somehow saying that sexual abuse doesn't matter.
I think what the Republicans, not just on the Senate Judiciary Committee, but Republicans in the Senate at large are doing is wrong, and so is the Republican president. They are sending a message that sexual assault, allegations of sexual assault do not matter.
Lisa Booth is a senior fellow at Independent Women's Voice, and she joins us tonight. So yesterday, Lisa, you probably saw this. Mazie Hirono of Hawaii, a U.S. senator, junior senator there, said that it's not just Brett Kavanaugh is guilty. All men are guilty by definition because they're men. And it's not just that we should believe Ford, but all women because they're women. Is that kind of the core of the feminist promise? I don't remember that part.
I think it's the core of the Me Too movement. And Tucker, remember Emily Linden, a columnist for Teen Vogue? She tweeted out, I think a little less than a year ago, that it's okay if innocent men get caught up in the Me Too movement because it serves a broader purpose. I fundamentally disagree with that, and I think that's the bigger problem with the Me Too movement, Tucker, is it only considers the accuser and it doesn't consider the accused. And Judge Kavanaugh's life also hangs in the balance here. And that's my bigger problem. And he's not going to get a fair hearing. There's no due process in the court of public opinion. So if his life and his career gets railroaded and he's innocent, that's a huge problem. We should care as a society about getting that right and having some balance here.
But isn't the idea that we don't punish the innocent, that we don't believe in collective punishment, punishing because you're in a group that you didn't choose to join? I mean, aren't those kind of the core promises of America? Why are all these rich and powerful people suddenly saying the opposite?
Well, they should be, Tucker. But even to the broader point of wanting an FBI investigation, as your previous guest said, what is there to investigate? Christine Ford doesn't remember when. She doesn't remember where. She doesn't remember how she got there. She doesn't remember how she got home. Yet we're supposed to believe the veracity of her most central and critical claim that Judge Kavanaugh attempted to try to rape or assault her simply based on her gender. And that is wrong. And these allegations are for 36 years ago. And if that's the premise, the precedent we want to start moving forward, then someone like Cory Booker, who wrote in his college paper that he tried to take advantage of a drunk 15-year-old girl, that means he's disqualified from running for office in 2020 or president. This is ridiculous, Tucker. And I think we've reached peak insanity as a country. And it's really important to take a step back, to examine the facts, and to look at and realize that Judge Kavanaugh's life also hangs in the balance, and innocent men could get swept up in this entire movement.
People are terrified in this country right now, not just guilty people, but innocent people, decent people. They're afraid. They're afraid of the mob. The left is out of control, I think. Lisa, thank you.
I agree. Thank you, Tucker.
President Trump has ordered the declassification of documents related to the Russia investigation, but he may not get his wish. The bureaucracy apparently preparing to fight back. The question is, who controls classified information in America? The elected president or unelected bureaucrats? That's next.
Still have income every month of your retirement, guaranteed, at LincolnFinancial.com.
Well, the executive branch serves exclusively the President of the United States. That's the point of it. And for centuries, nobody disputed that principle because it's in the Constitution and also because it makes sense. The President is elected and the bureaucrats who work for him are not. They can't be removed. But now, thanks to Trump, bureaucrats are making a new play for supremacy in this country. Earlier this week, the President ordered the declassification of documents related to the Russia investigation. But according to news reports, officials at the DOJ, FBI, and Office of the Director of National Intelligence are planning to defy his orders and keep some of those documents redacted regardless of what the President, their boss, says. Tom Fitton has spent a lot of time around redacted documents. He's the president of Judicial Watch, which has exposed a lot of this information to public view, and we're grateful for that. Tom, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So the claim being made on the left, and the beauty of this is we're going to find out in the end, and I honestly can't wait, but is that some of these documents, airing them in public, will jeopardize our intel agencies and American national security. Do you think that's true?
No, it's not true, and it's demonstrated in prior releases not to be true. The FISA warrant applications, which have been partially declassified thanks to earlier personal intervention by the president, showed corruption. They were using this DNC dossier to fraudulently mislead a court into allowing spy warrants.
And they tried to keep that classified.
Not only that, when we first asked for them, they refused to confirm or deny it existed because it might be classified.
But wait a second. They can only keep something, if I understand the law, they can only keep something classified because they don't own the documents. They belong to us, Americans. They can only keep it classified if releasing it would jeopardize the country's security, correct? But they kept it to protect themselves from exposure as corrupt? Is that what you're saying?
Well, and that's what's been shown. And you know, folks like Devin Nunes and Bob Goodlatte, who runs the Judiciary Committee, they've reviewed the documents that the president is seeking to declassify, and they know that there's nothing there worth protecting in terms of protecting our national security. And the media who's complaining about the release of this information in this very scandal was happily reporting classified information that was rightly classified, and the release of which would harm national security and potentially harm citizens.
Wait, so you're saying that when journalists tell us that their job is to make sure we have less information, know less about what our government is doing, they're in on the scam themselves?
Not only that, they're aware of government officials who may have broken the law and leaking classified information.
So their allegiance is to bureaucrats and not their viewers or readers, is what you're saying.
That's right. You know, the president is, in his genius way, bypassing the media by releasing the documents in a lawful way to the American people, as opposed through the illegal leaks where classified information isn't protected. That's the traditional Washington way.
So very quick, since you've been doing this for so long, have you ever seen the media come out on the side of secrecy and against the public's right to know?
Well, in this case they have, and it's all the anti-Trump bias. It's all about getting Trump. Keeping this information classified is designed to make it harder for President Trump to defend himself against the lawlessness. And the classification of information related to the FISA warrants, text messages, the mere existence of the FISA warrants, all help protect the deep state from being held accountable for the misconduct during the Obama administration well into this administration.
They're so corrupt. The press is so corrupt.
We're waiting for the documents.
What this is.
We're waiting for the documents. All we wanted the documents under law, and the president did a heroic act in doing it.
Yeah, they belong to us. They belong to the public, not to John Brennan. Tom, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, colleges led the way on segregation a generation or two ago, and thank God they did. And yet, weirdly, they are now resegregating students by race, and they're getting away with it, and the left supports it. The world is turned upside down. We're going to try and right it in the next segment. Plus, Paula Jones joins us to discuss Hillary Clinton's change of heart on the FBI investigating allegations of sex abuse. Stay tuned for that. A half-century ago, college students helped lead the charge for desegregation in this country, particularly in schools, and thank heaven they did. They were absolutely right about that. Now, amazingly, colleges are leading a charge to resegregate their student bodies. There are many examples of this, but here's just one. At the University of Maryland, a group called White Awake meets weekly to give students of a certain race a safe space to talk about racial issues, for real. At the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, meanwhile, a program called White Consciousness Conversations is advertised as a way to develop anti-racist practice. What is this? Jason Nichols is a professor of African American Studies at the University of Maryland. He joins us tonight. Jason, thanks a lot for coming on.
Anytime.
So I grew up being taught and believing that the desegregation of schools of the student bodies was one of the crowning achievements of American history. It didn't solve all of our problems, but it was definitely a really important and righteous thing to do, and I still feel that way. How weird is it to watch colleges resegregate and to say that there are programs just for certain races? Like, when did that happen, and why are we for that?
So again, well, this is going to be a historic moment as well, because I'm going to agree with you on one level. I think that these programs for white students are segregation, and they are a big mistake, even if the purpose is to make people more aware. I think it's a bad idea to have these programs. You
just
can't
for
really
white
learn
students or for any?
Well, I would say for white students, and the reason being, first of all, you can't learn about diversity and learn about multiculturalism in an exclusive environment. And I think, again, there's a difference between separation and segregation.
I'm not sure I buy that. I mean, that's kind of an apartheid argument. But
it's not an apartheid argument.
You can't learn about diversity if you're walled off from people who are different from you. You're totally right about that. So how, if you're for diversity, why would you segregate any race? Isn't that what we're against? I mean, I still am against it. I'm for integration. I think I'm the last one. But.
Well, are you really? I'm
arguing for it now. I'm against any of this stuff.
Yeah, no. So I'm in agreement, particularly when we're talking about white students at a predominantly white institution.
But how does it help African American students or Pacific Islanders or any group? How does it help them learn about diversity to be walled off from people who are different?
Well, I think in many cases, students of color are pretty accustomed to diverse environments, and I think there's a difference again between segregation
but that's not true.
And separation.
Those are two very different.
Power plays a role in that.
I know the numbers on this.
Okay.
And the average American black high school student goes to a school that is less diverse than the average black high school student went to 30 years ago.
Right, actually, but at the University of Maryland,
that's what I'm just saying. A lot of these people are coming from highly non-diverse backgrounds, where everybody they know is the same color as them. So how would it help them understand diversity to be placed with people just like them?
Sure. Well, I would tell you, number one, being at the University of Maryland, if you're a black student, regardless, or a Latino student or an Asian Pacific Islander, and you go to the University of Maryland, you are going to be in environments sometimes where you are the only black or brown or whatever person. So you are not going to need to learn about white people or being around white people. Now, if you are a white student, you may be in an exclusive environment all the time, and you don't need further exclusion from other groups.
So it's okay to segregate except for white kids.
Again,
so
there's a difference between segregation and separation.
What's the difference?
Again, power plays a role in this.
I don't know what that means. There are a ton of power. I mean, there are a ton of powerless white people in this country. Their life expectancy is declining. They're the only group.
Yeah, well, they're
so,
still.
I mean,
well, if you want to talk life expectancy, African American life expectancy is still 5 years behind.
Yeah, it's terrible, and I'm totally against that. I couldn't agree. Look, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm just saying, you don't want to generalize about a whole group just because of its skin color, right? That's wrong.
Oh, absolutely, and that's the purpose. I agree with you that we do need groups that are diverse. We need African Americans, Latinos. We need people to.
For that, I mean, I'm taking the opposition position from Bull Connor. Like, I'm totally opposed to segregation.
I'm glad that you're opposed to Bull Connor.
I am, and the University of Maryland and Harvard, which has a separate graduation ceremony for black kids, Bull Connor would approve of that. He would strongly approve of that.
So, those separate graduation ceremonies, they don't require that black students.
Cool. Oh, I get it.
No, I didn't say that.
We're going to have to continue this conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Professor Nichols, great to see you.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker.
Democratic socialists in government have apparently been caught on video bragging about performing political activism as you pay for it. Will they be fired? Rhetorical question. We've got the tape. Well, a new video from Project Veritas appears to show State Department employee Stuart Carafa bragging that he does political work for the Democratic Socialists of America while on the clock at his taxpayer-funded job. Watch this.
It's impossible to fire federal employees. I don't know. Now I'm just straight like 8:30 to 5, so it gives me so much more time and like emotional bandwidth to do all this stuff.
So like it's that I'm gonna do DSA work.
Yeah, pretty much.
Emotional bandwidth. That's how they talk in the U.S. government. Another video allegedly shows DOJ paralegal Allison Hraybar bragging that she can use DOJ resources to help plan political harassment. Watch this.
There's a lot of talk at work about like how we can resist from inside. Yeah. It's kind of lucky that the DOJ we can't
So we ran the license plate and it was a car registered to Jeremy Wiley. So his car is parked outside a house that he does own as of very recently, and someone saw him through the window, which is also very helpful.
Also, we're able to run license plates through like...
We cannot do it officially.
Now, we should say we haven't independently verified the authenticity of either video. I can tell you, as someone who's lived in Washington for 35 years, this kind of stuff definitely happens. The State Department and DOJ has told us they are investigating the videos and the people in them. But for now, we're inclined to agree with the two people you just saw. It is basically impossible to fire a federal employee. And if they do get fired, of course, they'll probably get a book deal. So maybe we shouldn't encourage it. Well, it's no secret the left has become completely unglued in the age of Trump. You see it every time you turn on the television. But in case you need a refresher, here's one.
They say, Maxine, please don't say impeachment anymore. And when they say that, I say impeachment, impeachment, impeachment.
This is about the closest I'll probably ever have in my life to an I am Spartacus moment.
This time, they, not you, have an ally in the White House. This time, they have an ally. They're a small percentage of the American people, virulent people. Some of them the dregs of society.
The men of this country, just shut up and step up. Do the right thing for a change.
People didn't used to talk like that. What you're seeing is a descent into madness. What's causing it? Victor Davis Hanson has thought a lot about this. He's a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution and one of our favorite guests. He joins us tonight. Dr. Hanson, what do you think is the core cause of this mass hysteria taking place on the left right now?
Well, I think that in June, Trump was sort of inching up toward 45, and then the Michael Cohen and the Stormy Daniels gave an opening, and then all of a sudden the progressives said, time's running out before the midterms, so we saw the hijacking. Really, it was a hijacking of the McCain funeral, and then next we had this weird op-ed that was anonymous suggesting there was an ongoing coup in the Trump administration, which the Times seemed to approve of, and then we had Bob Woodward back on, taking up where Omaroso and Michael Wolff left off, and then we had this Spartacus circus of the Kavanaugh hearings, and there was an echo chamber. And then within that echo chamber, though, the old guard liberal wing of the Democratic Party had birthed this race, class, gender child
And now it was devouring them. So Joe Biden said, you know, I may be an old white guy, but I can say dregs of society. And Hillary Clinton said, I'm a has-been, but I can get back and give lectures about the rights of a woman accused, an accuser, very ironic. And then we had Dianne Feinstein playing the key role where she thought she'd have this insurance policy, this anonymous letter, and just sort of see if the hearings derailed Kavanaugh. If they didn't, she'd whiff it around and that scent would destroy Kavanaugh, and it didn't work. And so she was left with this kind of Orwellian situation, says, I don't really know if this is true, I just put it out there, but we're going to live now in a world of jurisprudence where any of us are subject to a charge that's anonymous 36 years out of our past, where we don't know the location or the time of the incident, but the accuser shall tell the government agency the conditions under which the accused shall be investigated. And I don't know how this is all going to react, Tucker, but they think they're creating this blue wave, but it may be that people in places like where I am, the Central Valley or Western Pennsylvania, said, you know what, that's why I voted for Trump, because I didn't see an alternative to this madness, and that could happen. Or they don't want to live in a world in which we live the anonymous charge rules over logic and rational inquiry and empiricism.
He's a flawed guy, but these people are starting to really scare us. That's how I feel. Anyway, Victor Davis Hanson, thank you. Smart, so smart, as always.
Thank you.
Hillary Clinton has changed her view on FBI investigations into, excuse me, it's hilarious. It actually started to, I feel laugh rising, into old sexual abuse allegations. Paula Jones has watched this for many years. She joins us next to assess Hillary's change of heart. Stay tuned. Well, a new video from Project Veritas appears to show State Department employee Stuart Carafa bragging that he does political work for the Democratic Socialists of America while on the clock at his taxpayer-funded job. Watch this.
It's impossible to fire federal employees. I don't know. Now I'm just straight like 8:30 to 5, so it gives me so much more time and like emotional bandwidth to do all this stuff.
So like it's that I'm gonna do DSA work.
Yeah, pretty much.
Emotional bandwidth. That's how they talk in the U.S. government. Another video allegedly shows DOJ paralegal Allison Hraybar bragging that she can use DOJ resources to help plan political harassment. Watch this.
There's a lot of talk at work about like how we can resist from inside. Yeah. It's kind of lucky with the DOJ we can't
So we ran the license plate as a car registered to Jeremy Wiley. So yeah, his car is parked outside a house that he does own as of very recently, and someone saw him through the window, which is also very helpful.
Also, we're able to run license plates through like...
We cannot do it officially.
Now, we should say we haven't independently verified the authenticity of either video. I can tell you, as someone who's lived in Washington for 35 years, this kind of stuff definitely happens. The State Department and DOJ has told us they are investigating the videos and the people in them. But for now, we're inclined to agree with the two people you just saw. It is basically impossible to fire a federal employee. And if they do get fired, of course, they'll probably get a book deal. So maybe we shouldn't encourage it. Well, it's no secret the left has become completely unglued in the age of Trump. You see it every time you turn on the television. But in case you need a refresher, here's one.
They say, Maxine, please don't say impeachment anymore. And when they say that, I say impeachment, impeachment, impeachment.
This is about the closest I'll probably ever have in my life to an I am Spartacus moment.
This time, they, not you, have an ally in the White House. This time, they have an ally. They're a small percentage of the American people, virulent people. Some of them the dregs of society.
The men of this country, just shut up and step up. Do the right thing for a change.
People didn't used to talk like that. What you're seeing is a descent into madness. What's causing it? Victor Davis Hanson has thought a lot about this. He's a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution and one of our favorite guests. He joins us tonight. Dr. Hanson, what do you think is the core cause of this mass hysteria taking place on the left right now?
Well, I think that in June, Trump was sort of inching up toward 45, and then the Michael Cohen and the Stormy Daniels gave an opening, and then all of a sudden the progressives said, time's running out before the midterms, so we saw the hijacking. Really, it was a hijacking of the McCain funeral, and then next we had this weird op-ed that was anonymous suggesting there was an ongoing coup in the Trump administration, which the Times seemed to approve of. And then we had Bob Woodward back on, taking up where Omaroso and Michael Wolff left off. And then we had this Spartacus circus of the Kavanaugh hearings. And there was an echo chamber. Then within that echo chamber, though, the old guard liberal wing of the Democratic Party had birthed this race, class, gender child, and now it was devouring them. So Joe Biden said, you know, I may be an old white guy, but I can say dregs of society. And Hillary Clinton said, I'm a has-been, but I can get back and give lectures about the rights of a woman accused, an accuser, very ironic. And then we had Dianne Feinstein playing the key role, where she thought she'd have this insurance policy, this anonymous letter, and just sort of see if the hearings derailed Kavanaugh. If they didn't, she'd whiff it around and that scent would destroy Kavanaugh, and it didn't work. And so she was left with this kind of Orwellian situation, says, I don't really know if this is true, but I just put it out there, but we're going to live now in a world of jurisprudence where any of us are subject to a charge that's anonymous 36 years out of our past, where we don't know the location or the time of the incident, but the accuser shall tell the government agency the conditions under which the accused shall be investigated. And I don't know how this is all going to react, Tucker, but they think they're creating this blue wave, but it may be that people in places like where I am, the Central Valley or Western Pennsylvania, said, you know what, that's why I voted for Trump, because I didn't see an alternative to this madness, and that could happen. Or they don't want to live in a world in which we live the anonymous charge rules over logic and rational inquiry and empiricism.
He's a flawed guy, but these people are starting to really scare us. That's how I feel. Anyway, Victor Davis Hanson, thank you. Smart, so smart, as always.
Thank you.
Hillary Clinton has changed her view on FBI investigations into, excuse me, it's hilarious. It actually started to, I feel laugh rising, into old sexual abuse allegations. Paula Jones has watched this for many years. She joins us next to assess Hillary's change of heart. Stay tuned.